In 1985, computer game publisher Taito released to arcades a game known as Tiger Heli. 1 year later, it was ported, quite faithfully, to Nintendo Entertainment System in the United States. It's a top-down view, vertical scrolling shooter with gameplay comparable to 1942 or The Guardian Legend. In this game, the player assumes control of the titular state-of-the-art military attack vehicle, which is, according to the NES game instruction manual, the result of a billion-dollar defense project to create the ultimate stealth jetcopter. The mission is described as a sneak attack to stop the fictional militaristic terrorist nation of Kantun from organizing a massive offensive assault in an effort to take over the whole world. The game begins giving the player a limited number of chances or helicopters to use in an effort to obtain a high score. After all helicopters are destroyed by enemy forces, the game receives a game over, erasing his or her current score, and requiring he or she to restart the game from the beginning. There is, however, a way to avoid losing one's game progress. During the display of the game over screen, if the player simultaneously presses and holds down the button A, the button B, he or she may continue from the point at which they lost their final helicopter. The trick is relatively well known among players who have played the game and is easy to learn through a quick Google search. Tiger Heli features 4 playable stages, which offer little in the way of visual or gameplay variety. Each stage features an urban, mountainous, or oceanic setting, and sometimes a mixture of 2 or more. The objective of each level is to destroy as many vehicles as possible. That includes tanks, gunboats, gun turrets, and grounded aircraft, and structures as well. One can collect power-ups and bonuses, ultimately reaching the ending checkpoint without losing all of one's helicopters if they're good enough. And if a player reaches the goal of Stage 4, the game seamlessly begins again at Stage 2, and the cycle continues indefinitely. Yet Level 1 is never revisited. Despite the game's simplicity, repetitive gameplay, run-of-the-mill graphics, and minimal use of music and sound effects, it is said to have sold somewhere between, nearly 1 million copies in the United States, and also spawned several sequels in the Twin Cobra series. In all, this is a fairly solid and enjoyable game for those who like arcade-style shooter games. On the surface, Tiger Heli seems a straightforward good versus evil military confrontation. The player and the country he or she represents being the protagonists and the Kantun terrorists being the antagonists. The NES version of the game is in English, and the manual depicts a military to which the player belongs as large, organized, and well-funded. Though it's never explicitly stated in the instruction manual, I do not feel it is a stretch of plausibility to assume that the military power depicted as good represents the United States. Further analysis of the storyline and gameplay reveals a great deal of symbolism and allegory paralleling to the history of major conflict and war both in recent history and as a whole. The idea of a game based on war or a military mission is neither shocking nor uncommon, yet arguably trivializes the rest, and bloody conflicts which seem to be an unfortunate symptom of the human condition. The game in question gives very little backstory, which the player can familiarize his or herself. The instruction manual, as was touched on before, simply tells the player that the nation of Kantun is run by terrorists and their goal is world domination through violent means. It seems logical that such an apparently malevolent and threatening entity ought to be dealt with through either diplomacy or military aggression. Yet we, the players, are given only the most brief description of the nation of Kantun and their goals. We know nothing about the history of the country, what their war crimes might have been, what manner of government they employ, whether or not their citizens are oppressed or in danger, or if they conceivably even have the means to follow through, or their apparent threats. All we know is what we are told by a person, likely of political or military importance, who represents one side of what appears to be a complex conflict. We have no reason to doubt this information, yet neither do we have reason to believe it. In the opening of level of Tiger Heli on NES, the combat chopper is released from the back of the truck across a body of water from what we can assume is the coast of Kantun. The player advances and quickly comes into contact with a handful of armed tanks. Interestingly, these tanks initially have their cannons directed inland. The opposite direction of the helicopter. Is this the enemy being caught off guard, or is this possibly a symbol of government oppression against its citizen? We cannot be sure. Shortly after dispatching or avoiding all the tanks, the player advances into what appears to be a residential neighborhood, colorful yet simple. Looking houses are peppered about an area of green grass, shrubbery, and 2-lane streets. These homes pose no threat. And can be shot at by the player. Each house fired upon yields 100 points to the player's score. Similarly, points were awarded for destroying cars parked at these houses, railway cars, and a large fuel tank in the neighborhood. Now, regardless of the graphical limitations of the NES, the houses appear small and humble, like homes that would be lived in by the general population, not those in political or military power. You can elect not to fire upon these houses, but you forfeit the points they award, and collateral damage to them is unavoidable. In the light of the destruction the player brings upon what seems to be the homes of innocent people, we ought ask, can a nation's military, regardless of its governments and ideal, really be faulted for defending themselves by trying to shoot down an invading chopper? Human reason and rationality would dictate not. Thus we enter a cycle of violence in which neither party feels unprovoked or unjustified in their killing. Once past the first area of level 1, no more civilian domiciles are seen in the game. In fact, there are very few structures in general in the remainder of the game. Simply military vehicles and weaponry, boats, tanks, grounded aircraft, and other fighting machines. As you continue to play the game, it will become apparent to he or she that the gameplay is incredibly repetitive, bordering on inane. All one does is shoot enemies and collect power-ups. If one is particularly skilled or utilizes the game over button combination to continue playing indefinitely, he or she will eventually notice that they are experiencing a strange sensation of déjà vu. When the 4th level of play has been completed, the game starts the player not at a new stage 5, but back at stage 2. As I mentioned before, the cycle of 2-3-4, 2-3-4, etc. continues perpetually until the game is turned off. We only see stage 1 once per playthrough. And I find this interesting. This would be due to some technical limitation, maybe, or design flaw, but in reality, it makes sense in the sadly unfortunate way. War or military conflict as a whole runs rampant through Western and world history. It can seem as though war is a perpetual enterprise, never truly beginning or ending, but simply repeating, occasionally morphing slightly in the form of a new enemy. That way, the levels in Tiger Heli cycle endlessly represent the unending cycle of violence. The fact that the first level is never repeated is also telling. Could this mean that despite death and sorrow, our constant and unending conflicts continually lose meaning? That we become so entrenched in bloodshed that we neither remember nor care about what started the violence to begin with? In the beginning of the game, it seems that innocents are sacrificed as fictional war, yet we never revisit that thought. After we have attacked and killed those who are helpless, we gotta hide, and we forget the atrocities in the interest of steadfast yet self-defeating progress. For if we can truly forget this, then it is as if it never happened really, and we absolve ourselves of our crimes. Forgetting also enables us, though, to continue to repeat our mistakes and perpetuate a static culture. That the game depicts eternal war with no redeeming outcomes is unpleasant enough. I find it downright sad to ponder the trick allowing players to endlessly continue from game over. It makes the death of the helicopter pilot the player controls seem absolutely trivial. As soon as the pilot's dead, the controlling force, the player representing the government military in charge, suffers no consequence and is immediately ready to send another worthless pawn to his meaningless death in a war that literally cannot be won. We are engaged with the purposely fictional nation of Cantoon, a place on the surface that has nice residential areas, plenty of water, mountains, and semblance of infrastructure. Nothing is unique or telling about this country. It could almost be any territory existing above third world status. In fact, the name Cantoon is reminiscent in the word canton, which is derived from European languages, simply means small corner. So we have a huge, well-funded military power and a nondescript nation presented as a small corner. Or perhaps more accurately, every corner. As touched upon earlier, the nationality of the protagonist is never revealed, yet seems to be a large Western power. Perhaps the true answer lies in the hidden meaning of the name itself, Tiger Heli. Military vehicles are often given intimidating names, Black Hawk, Cobra, Chinook, Apache, etc. Many are named after fearsome beasts, and this is true also of Tiger Heli. Yet why tiger instead of another strong, quick, and powerful animal, or cat? Jaguar, puma, cougar, lion, saber-tooth, all these would seem to get across the same point as the tiger. When most of us think of a tiger, the first thing we can think of is, in fact, what many of us know from early childhood as their striking appearance. Tigers are striped. The word helicopter is derived from the Greek word helix, meaning spiral, and praeton, meaning wing. Think pterodactyl. This makes crystal clear sense, and would explain the truncation of helicopter to heli. It is, however, interesting to note that on its own, heli would still only represent half of the total world helicopter. Only the part meaning spiral, consider if you will. Another interpretation that heli is perhaps a bastardized version of another very similar Greek word, helios. The word is used in relation to the sun of our solar system. It is common knowledge that our sun is a star, the brightest star in the sky. When broken down in such a way, tiger heli can be interpreted in two parts: large predatory beasts with distinct markings, sprites, and the life-giving sun, star. Could it be true that the name tiger heli provides us with clues we need to see the truth of the attacking nation of the game? Stripes and stars clearly point to the US most likely being the protagonist nation. While this is not a stunning revelation, its implications are interesting in the context of other factors regarding the game. We have the US sending us, the player, on a mission invading a small nation based solely upon hearsay or propaganda with no physical intelligence or proof of the threat of said nation. A nation that seems to have endless amounts of weaponry, perhaps as a result of a wealth or a valuable commodity, possibly fossil fuels as showcased in the early appearance of railroads and a huge fuel tank. So in a full summary of this analysis, we have Tiger Heli, the United States, the manifestation of the stars and stripes, sending countless military pawns to their inevitable, yet meaningless deaths in a war based only on faith and hearsay, with a self-sufficient nation which could represent any and every corner of the planet. Perhaps there's more to this quaint, aging video game than seems apparent on its unassuming surface. Perhaps it's a representation of Western empire building and a culture of excess and entitlement, where the average man has no purpose but to die for his country. Perhaps Tiger Heli shows us a fiction that is all too close to reality. But then again, it could just be an NES game, right? Ladies and gentlemen, this was another Creepypasta, an incredible overanalyzation of a game released on the NES, a port of what seems to be just a simple arcade game. For starters, I will say it was well written, like reading some of the manual, but what I sort of have a problem with is the actual theory, and well, that's not really great if you're going to talk about just a Creepypasta. I mean, it's not bad. In a way, I like it. It's kind of like reading something from Project MK Ultra or a subset of it, or what might be some secret dark black project coming out of it, a way to condition or solidify propaganda. But the level of how Illuminati confirmed it got irked me. First of all, the name Cantoon literally makes me think of Canada. And if the US invaded Canada, I don't think we'd have that many tanks and whatnot. But regardless, towards the middle, the theory just got a little facepalm worthy, to the point where you sort of say to yourself, it's just an NES game, man, that's all it is, a game on Nintendo. The fact that harping on a game for restarting on level 2, 3, 4 at first results in an allegory of war itself is just cringeworthy, kind of. I mean, if you think about it, it used to be an arcade game. It was designed to suck out quarters by being quote-unquote hard. The repetitive levels are just a very crafty, cost-cutting mechanic, and at the time it was considered unorthodox as well, if you really look at it. But from all the shooters I've ever played in my life, and I played plenty of vertical shooters, 1942, Mobile Light Force, love that game, most games sort of have a similar look to them. I mean, you're doing the same kind of stuff. I mean, why not just overgeneralize that as well? And the overanalyzation bit wasn't all bad. I'm kind of making it sound like it was completely awful. You know, it sort of does make you think, and it makes you think properly. Sure, it kind of get a little, it gets a little facepalm worthy, it gets super cringy at times, but it does hold itself together for the most part. It's like the most flimsiest Jenga tower. I don't recall a major military involvement in the US in 1985. I know the Gulf happened a few years after. I don't know if anything truly happened in 85, but if somebody knows more about US engagements, please let us know in the comments below. But I would like to avoid the whole political side of YouTube, as I don't want to see the comments unfortunately marred in a drive-by shooting by YouTube political activists. That is a section of YouTube I think we all would like to stay away from. Ultimately, it wasn't that great. I think for a Creepypasta, if your main theory is making me cringe, it's not that great. I mean, it's not a shitpasta, but it's definitely not a great Creepypasta. And Whether the overgeneralization was creepy or funny, I hope you got some laughs or some spooks out of this creepypasta. Ultimately, I ask what you think of this. What would you change this theory? What would you change in this theory, actually? What would you rate it? Please let me know in the comments below. This has been another episode of Haunted Gaming, part of Creepypasta. I actually don't know if this is just theory pastas. Well, I'll see when it comes to titling the video. That being said, if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike it if you dislike it. This is me, Mudahar, and I am out.